Let's get to Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated NBA writer. Chris, what happened to your Pacers?
Hey, they may have fallen apart a little bit down the stretch last night. I mean, I think, Roy Hibbert getting into foul trouble in the third quarter was just devastating for them last night, Dan. I mean, their entire defensive game plan sort of revolves around his ability to just be a paint clogger. And we can talk about LeBron and Wade till we're blue in the face, and they had phenomenal games. But Shane Battier had maybe the play of the game when he drew that fourth foul on Hibbert with that charge. It completely changed the dynamic of the game.
Well, as we head to Game 5 with this, and I agree with you with the way it was called on Hibbert and West, I thought it changed a little bit of the complexion there. But we did see LeBron James do some great things in that game. I thought the best thing he did is he made sure Wade got off early, and he attacked the hoop. Passing-wise, everything, a little bit more movement and flow there. Going into Game 5 now, how does this series look or change?
I think Miami has to be, considered back in control right now. But it's the margin for error is almost non-existent for either team at this point. It really just comes down to which team either gets contributions from more players in terms of Miami or is able to stay out of foul trouble with their bigs in terms of Indiana. I mean, I thought LeBron, that was maybe the best game I've seen LeBron play in a very long time, maybe ever. Just because, in the first half, Wade was still giving them nothing. He was 3 for 10 from the floor. And LeBron wasn't getting a lot of calls when he was going into the paint. I mean, he drove a couple of times straight into Hibbert, and Hibbert just drilled him, and the referee said play on. And I think to LeBron's credit, he continued to be aggressive even after halftime. And like you said, he made a concerted effort after the half to continue to try to get Wade involved, to continue to try to get him easy buckets, and that was the hallmark really of a true superstar. I mean, he give Wade credit for being persistent and not getting down on himself in that second half, but a lot of that had to do with LeBron and his insistence on getting him more involved and sort of willing this team to win. I mean, it's going to take this kind of effort from those two guys every single night. I mean, they're not getting anything really from anybody else. I mean, Udonis Haslem, really came through for them in the fourth quarter with those jump shots. He made 4 jumpers in the last 6 minutes that he hadn't been making all season long. Forget all series. He's going to need to do that the rest of the series. But it's going to be incredibly important for Wade and LeBron to not just have good games, but to have games close to what they had last night, or else Indiana, I think, is still fully capable of winning down in Miami and taking control of the series.
Successful season for the Clippers?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they went to the playoffs, against the Memphis team where a lot of people thought, myself included, consider them underdogs. They have a lot of young players that had a lot to learn. And I watched Blake Griffin in this last series, and really over the last 2 series, Dan, and I look at him, and I think he's going to get an incredible education from going up against Zach Randolph in the first round and learning the technique that he uses and the physicality that he plays with, and again with Duncan in the second round. I mean, we've seen time and time again young players go to the playoffs for their first time and come back better. I mean, no greater example of that is Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City. I mean, Kevin Durant got beat by the Lakers in the first round 2 years ago, and he recommitted himself to the defensive end, and he's been a much better player since then. I think you're going to have a similar evolution with Blake Griffin, where he is going to continue to evolve as a player, become a more complete offensive player, and come back next year even better. But from Griffin right on down the line, Dan, DeAndre Jordan, even Chris Paul, this team is going to benefit from this sort of, for many of them, for their first playoff experience, and I think they're going to come back much better next year.
What about Vinny Del Negro, his job status?
I think he's going to keep his job. I think he earned it with that first round series win against Memphis. I thought he won that series in a lot of ways for them, Dan. I mean, he outcoached Lionel Hollins in Game 7 when he went to Reggie Evans and he stayed with Kenyon Martin and Eric Bledsoe in that fourth quarter, whereas Hollins just kind of got hung up on playing guys like Gilbert Arenas and O.J. Mayo for long stretches. I thought he earned the right to come back next year. I mean, Vinny's got a lot of detractors, and I got to admit I'm not 100% sold on him as a head coach, but I feel like if he's done this kind of job and the team has obviously responded to him as they have over these last couple of months, I think he's earned the right to come back next year.
Can the Lakers push this to 7?
I don't think so. They've been surprisingly consistent throughout this series. I mean, besides the Game 1 clunker, for the last 3 games, they've played pretty well. And that wasn't what they were doing, Dan, in the Denver series. They were either hot in one game or completely ice cold in the next. But the last 3 games, they've played pretty well. They've just been outplayed. And I wouldn't be surprised at all in this Game 5 to see something more reminiscent of Game 1, where Oklahoma City just runs them out of the gym, and the Lakers, specifically guys like Bynum or Gasol, just get either fold or just get completely outplayed because I don't think they have the mental toughness that they had in years past. I mean, I think there's a method to Kobe's madness in trying to get on Gasol and trying to you know get inside his head and try to make him play better in this next game. But we've seen too much of a roller coaster ride with Gasol this year, where he plays great in one game and he just vanishes in the next. And we've obviously seen the same type of thing from Andrew Bynum. I just think the Lakers have had their backs broken as a result of the way Oklahoma City has played in the fourth quarter of these games. I mean, the fourth quarter, Dan, used to be their time. It used to be when they stepped up and they made the big plays, and the young team, like the Thunder, folded down the stretch. But in this series, it's been Oklahoma City that has been the vastly superior fourth quarter team, and I think that's going to be too much for the Lakers to handle.
Spurs favorite?
They have to be. I mean, I keep doubting them, and I'll admit it. I've been.
But why do we keep doubting a team that is the deepest team in the NBA?
Because that's why, though, Dan. Because the school of thought amongst myself and others is that great depth tends to be less of an advantage in the postseason because teams tighten their rotations and they play their star players more. And where, I honestly thought that, come the playoffs, we'd see less of a Danny Green and less of a Gary Neal. We wouldn't see the guys that played. We wouldn't see the 10-man rotation that San Antonio played in the regular season so much as we would a 5, 6, maybe 7-man rotation at best. But what Popovich has done is, to his credit, to his remarkable credit, he's continued to play these guys the same way he played them in the regular season. And I go back to a conversation I had with Danny Green back in January where Danny said to me, he's like, look, the minutes Greg Popovich is giving all us guys, all us reserve-type guys now, it's only going to make us more confident in ourselves come playoff time. We are seeing a staggering amount of confidence in guys like Green and Neal and even Kawhi Leonard, the rookie, in these games. And I think that's all traces back to the fact that Popovich saw that these guys were going to be necessary in the playoffs and played them accordingly, gave them big minutes, built up their confidence. So now they're at the point where they can contribute in key situations. And I see very few flaws in this game. I mean, look, the Clippers went into this series knowing they had to stop Tony Parker. They knew that he was the head of the snake, and their entire defensive strategy, from what I was told, was based around stopping him, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't come close to stopping this guy. So I just think that whoever the Spurs wound up playing in the second round, whether it's Oklahoma City, who they've played very well against in the regular season, or the Lakers, they're going to be at a decided advantage, and they have to be looked as the top team in the entire NBA right now.
Good to visit with you, Chris. I'm watching Oklahoma City and the Lakers this entire series, and I kept thinking, what would L.A. be like if they had a real point guard there and they had Chris Paul? The difference that would make, because they get nothing, and those guys look like they're in over their head. The one good game that you had Sessions and Blake play, they won that game. Yeah. But I keep looking back on what could have been with this team if they had Chris Paul.
You need a floor general out there, and it's not just a guy that can create. You don't necessarily need that in this Laker offense, but you need someone that's going to be comfortable making big shots and who's going to be comfortable taking control of the offense late in games. And you're right. When Blake and Sessions step up, going back to the Denver series, when they make shots, that's a whole different type of team. But that's why I think the Lakers are going to have an opportunity to upgrade this offseason, because this is a point guard-rich environment with Nash, with Jason Kidd, who's been rumored to want to play with Kobe for years. Even with the guy across the hall and Chauncey Billups, who'd be a great fit in that lineup. This is why when a lot of people throw dirt on the Lakers saying this is the end of the era for them, like with Miami, I think they both have a chance to upgrade a key position at the point guard spot in the offseason, and I think that could extend this window one more year.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, NBA writer. Yeah, I'm watching that game, and they get nothing out of their point guards. At least with Derek Fisher, I had somebody who had experience, wasn't afraid to take a big shot, and he had Kobe's respect there. These two guys, with Blake and Sessions, certainly with Sessions, he's just not ready for prime time. He's just not a starter at this level with this much at stake. And we'll see what they do in the offseason.